Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for July 1st. We've actually been in session already an hour, an executive session, and we did the Pledge of Allegiance. So we're going to go straight to the announcements. The first announcement is there's a town manager reception on July 25th. Our town manager, Stephen Crane, has, if you probably know, taken a job in Concord, and at the community house, the select board's having a small reception for him, and the time for the reception on the 25th will be 2 to 3:30. So please come by and wish our town manager good luck in his new position. Also, the Adult Center is having its groundbreaking on July 11th at 11 o'clock. It should be a really nice affair. Everyone's invited to please come. And also, I wanted to let everyone know that a group in town has pulled together. They call themselves the LACCF. And it's private fundraising for the Adult Center for things that don't quite come into the basic building, and they feel they really want to have everything the building needs when it opens the doors. If you're interested in contributing or learning more about it, they're going to have a table there at the groundbreaking, and you can try to contact Mary Beth at 262-7661. And if you didn't write that down, you can always shoot me an email, and I'll forward it to you for her. And Tom, you had an announcement also?
Yes, on July 17th at 7 p.m., it's a Wednesday night, we'll have a town forum to discuss the 2019 Vision Task Force, which is a group that is collecting data from a lot of different departments in town and some committees, and we're looking for resident input that's really going to guide us in trying to find the best town manager for the town of Long Meadow. And the best way to do that is to ask for people's input about what makes Long Meadow such a great town to live in, where we are right now in terms of our strengths, and also looking at some of the goals we're going to set for ourselves in the next 5 to 10 years, so we can determine what kind of skill sets we need from a town manager. So I hope people will attend. It's going to be advertised in the town paper. You can look for that, and please bring some friends with you. All right, it'll be held right in this room, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you. Stephen, any other announcements?
No.
Okay, just one last one. I was going to remind people, though we still have a month, that the plastic bag ban, I believe, goes into effect August 1st. And so please get your cloth bags, be prepared. You might want to remind the merchants. We're going to be sending out another little notice to them, and so we got 30 days to get ready for that. Any select board comments? No. All right, I just have one. Richard, I know that Mark Gold mentioned at the last meeting, and I just wanted to again say we did get a plaque from Debbie House that we gave to Bill Lowe this week, and again thanking him for his 3 years of service. We really appreciate the work he gave to this town, and he's been honored with a plaque.
And we need to welcome Mark to the board.
And we need to welcome Mark Strange. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year.
And I would ask for resident comments, but no one's here, so we'll move right ahead on that. Town manager reports. I'm glad you put the jacket on for the report.
Just
Keep your collars up.
try and at least look the part. So a couple of things just on town manager's report. We did take advantage of a program being offered by Eversource, where they will pay 100% of the cost to install the infrastructure to put basically power conduit and a pad to put a charging station at Town Hall. They will also reimburse us for 50% of the cost of the charging equipment. We are still working out the equipment part of it, which there's a couple of options. We've just been kind of reviewing those, but this will go kind of on the back side of Town Hall. As I think I've shared with the board, we have a plan to renovate and reorient Town Hall parking to both expand and improve the parking back there. And we wanted to really phase this installation with that plan, but the plan, I was hoping to do it in this year's capital plan. We had too many other needs. But we'll basically build temporary spaces that will fit the same alignment that we would have, and this charging station will be put in there with those temporary spaces. So I don't know when it's going to end up being there, but hopefully sometime soon. And right now we also did submit it to the Historic District Commission, because you probably will be able, I think we're going to put screening in, like we'll plant some shrubs or something, but you still technically will be able to see it from the right of way, so we wanted the Historic District Commission to take a look at it. The MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Planning Grant, that process has gone very, very well. I do want to commend Chief Dearborn for his work there, along with the work of the planning committee, which included many department heads and the tree warden. Marie, you were on that committee as well. A lot of great work went into it. That was facilitated by Pine Valley Planning Commission. I personally feel like it was a very, very worthwhile exercise for the town, and really opened my eyes to threats as a result of climate change that we really hadn't thought of in our prior emergency management, emergency planning efforts. For those of you who haven't seen it, the short takeaway was really water, bugs, and trees are kind of the major threats, and by that we mean increased precipitation, increased flooding, difficult, we've had a lot of rainstorms recently that kind of show the streets fill up pretty fast. Our drainage system works well. They do drain, but the increased storms overwhelm our stormwater system pretty quickly. And then of course trees, we have a beautiful tree canopy, but we also have trees that are falling. We had, I use the example, there was on a windless sunny day, an enormous tree fell across Long Meadow Street, barely missed destroying the car, and it was completely rotted inside. And so what are our efforts to making sure we better understand the health of our town trees? I think residents need to do the same, but certainly we need to take care of our own trees first. And then, of course, bugs are related to that tree component. So right now, we're preparing a draft application for about $450,000. There's a $25,000 town match, and I know 25,000, right? 25%. And so I know the chief and Paul have been talking about identifying those funds. So more to come on that. The Bliss Park ADA project is substantially complete. It's been striped. The parking lot is done. The pathways are done. I've heard pretty positive feedback from people on it. It seems like it's, we've been talking for years about wanting to pave Bliss Park parking lot, and I want to give Andy Carr an acknowledgement for really leading the charge to write the grant, to get the grant, and get the project done in accordance with the grant funding, which was a pretty accelerated timeline. Dwight Road is also substantially complete. I don't know if you've been out there. It looks great now that the pavement markings are done and the signals are up. There are going to be probably some tweaks to the signal timing and some of the lane assignments based on what we've seen. There's a 30-day window that the town is allowed to make those adjustments. That's covered under the general contract, but I think the choice that the board made on the type of signal was the right choice. When you turn left to go north on Dwight Road off of Williams, you look down the distance, it almost looks like a gateway arch. It looks great. I think traffic seems to be moving a lot more smoothly there. We greatly enhanced the capacity of the intersections, and it was a long project. We did have some setbacks, but I think overall that was a great improvement for the community and the region. Any questions?
Richard?
Yeah, Stephen, I was talking to Andy, and he said that they had just been notified last week they got $1 million grant.
Up to $1 million grant.
Up to $1 million grant.
Yeah, another Mass Office of Disabilities grant, I believe. No, Complete Streets. Sorry, Complete Streets grant. We had put in for the project out here that we've talked about on Bliss, but they said that Andy thinks we can get another $1 million, and we have to start to figure out, how do we meet our Complete Streets needs. Yeah, Andy, I could give Andy and Mario and the whole engineering division, and Craig Markham's down there. Our engineering aides, these grants don't just happen automatically. Those guys put a lot of work into getting them, so it's a real strength of the engineering division. It has been for the last few years.
Now, you're saying we received it, or we're
I
in
haven't
line?
seen the notification in writing, but Andy did report that he had gotten preliminary word from Complete Streets that we were going to
Complete
get
Streets.
potentially $1 million.
Potentially $1 million, okay.
That's something with the school safety too, isn't it, on this one?
Complete Streets is everything. It's because Complete Streets is really geared towards designing for all modes of transportation: bike, ped, bus, car. It ties pretty neatly to Safe Routes to School, which we are also a Safe Routes to School community and have done a few grant-funded projects through Safe Routes. In fact, I think that one is Safe Routes. So there is overlap, but that's one of the reasons why we've been so successful in grants, is because we pair the projects together. And you know, many roads in our community are pathways to schools.
Yeah, it'd be almost hard to tell which one isn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you saying the grant was for Safe Routes to School?
Yeah,
or-
I haven't seen the specifics of it.
Oh,
I just
so it
know
might be.
I just know we've got very favorable news from our Complete Streets program.
Mark?
Stephen, you talked about the White Road maybe needing tweaking. Is there a procedure or process is it the DOT who's going to be able to tweak that, or is our town traffic department going to be able to do it, or is it East Long? Who gets to decide what needs to be tweaked and who doesn't?
So our our town engineer.
So it's no longer the state DOT level, it's our town.
Yeah, the state DOT wasn't really involved in the design at all on that one, other than we have a Complete Streets bylaw. No, it's the same. The designer, Fuss and O'Neill, will work with our engineer, and quite honestly, our traffic sergeant is heavily involved in these conversations, because some of it is queuing and turning movements, and some of it is anecdotal evidence about or data about crashes and things like that, but also some of it is anecdotal evidence about how traffic is flowing at peak times. And this thing, plans look great on paper, but then sometimes when you get them out in the field, there's been plenty of times where I've looked at a plan on paper and said that no way that's going to fit in that spot, and then it fits in easily. And then there are times where you think, oh, there's plenty of room, and then it gets built and you're like, geez, that really is shoehorned in there. So the types of things I'm talking about, Mark, kind of on that order, where what was on the plan and what's actually now out in the field may not actually be what we thought we were going to get from a performance standpoint. Not the project is built according to spec, but it may not perform the way we projected it to.
Yeah, well, as a regular driver in that area, I'm impressed with the flow. It seems to be a little bit better. At one point, I thought we were doomed to worse traffic, and I'm starting to see it ease up, and it does look great, the fluted pulse. I did have a question about the electric vehicle charging station. Now, is the grant that means it has to be close to town hall, or is it because the town is planning to get electric vehicles in the future? What?
Yeah, the plan. Quite honestly, the original plan was I was going to get a town manager electric vehicle, and I still think that the town should do that to offer it as a bet.
Well, you mentioned Tesla. That's why we evolved a bit.
Originally, it was BMW was giving them away.
No.
BMW was either deeply discounting or giving their electric vehicles to municipalities, or they were being offset or something like that.
Wow.
So that was kind of got the ball rolling. I don't think, I think the charging station will be available for customers. I don't think it'll be a fast charge station, so, I don't expect it to get heavily used by, customers.
Yeah.
But I do think that electric vehicles really must be a part of the town's fleet going forward. It really makes too much sense for us to not do that, especially for something like the town manager's vehicle, where most of it's just running around town. There's the occasional trip to Boston, but if that was needed and we didn't feel like the EV was going to be up to it, then you just switch out for another municipal vehicle or take the private vehicle. But the town really should start deploying electric vehicles in the fleet.
And so when you say other people could charge there, would there be a fee or anything? I used to just
I don't
in
know
a
how that
town
works.
where I saw they had parking, and if you want to plug your car in, it was $1.50 an hour, which was kind of interesting.
I think there's different ways to do it. You can set it up different ways. I don't really don't know how that's going to work.
Pennies.
Yeah.
We may have one side be, town manager parking, and so it's municipal thing, or it may come with a card or a fob or something. I mean, I don't really know. Unfortunately, I didn't get to that level of detail.
Yeah.
But it's one of the, you just answer the questions how you need to, because if you don't you know, yeah, having the charging station to me is a must for that location.
Okay.
Any other questions for?
Right.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just have two quick things I was notified this afternoon on. Our Maya rewards that we received for activity that we did in FY19 were $32,000, a little bit more than $32,000. Those are direct credits against our insurance premiums, and they're basically earned through the town-wide departments doing proactive measures on risk assessment and certain other achievements. And then I also received notification that the town again received the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Reporting for our 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. So we've been waiting for that for a little while, and that has come in. This is the second year on the CAFR. We've been about 6 or 7 years on the budget one, so we have another little trophy to put up.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I just had one question. We're coming up to 4th of July. How are our pools? Everything up and going? I know you had mentioned before there was a problem with one of the kids' pools.
Still is.
There still is, and that's at Bliss or down in Greenwood?
No, Greenwood has a splash pad.
The splash pad's fine, but
So
it's
if
just
you
the-
have, actually, we just discussed this morning. You know, the town has a rule against babies in diapers in the bigger pools. I think for obvious reasons, I mean, water quality being the primary reason. So if you have a child, like a infant or a toddler, the splash pad is available for use. The kiddie pool loses water, and they have done a bunch of testing and analysis to try and figure out, you know, where is it losing water. We think it's on the jets. It's around the jets that, you know, it's not the drain. Sorry, the drain. It's the jets, because the water doesn't sink below. Once it gets below the jets, it stops losing water. And they've done dye testing, and they've blocked off a couple of jets, and they still haven't prevented it. I think the ultimate solution is there's probably a leak under the pad, under the cement. So cut up the cement and do all that, and obviously it's not a great time to do that.
So you're saying we might not have it for a while?
Yeah.
The kiddie pool at
Yeah, for
Bliss?
a while. Yeah.
Okay.
The other pools are all, I mean, as Barry saying the first time that
Yeah.
in many years that that they've been ready this early.
And tennis courts all up and going?
I think
There
we've
were
had
two, I'm not quite sure the status of the other two. 2 of the 4 clay courts are open.
Yeah.
Are open?
Right. I don't recall, I did not get an update on the other 2, quite honestly. They were looking to replace the poles for the net. One had given away. I'm not quite sure on the other side there, but at least minimum 2 of the clay courts are open.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thanks for your report. And now we're going to go on to, sort of 2 different, old business, DPW collective bargaining agreement.
I'd like to place a motion on the table that we approve the collective bargaining agreement as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay, 5-4.
I'd like to place a motion on the table that we approve the minutes of June 17, 2019 regular meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's
Yes.
just one typo. It's James Moynihan as opposed to Monahan.
Oh.
Just FYI, I mentioned that to Deb already, but just for everyone's information.
All right, anything else except the correction? All those in favor of accepting the minutes with that spelling correction? All those opposed, or all those abstaining?
Abstain. Oh, I should have voted for that.
Oh, so are you voting
Yeah.
for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, and now we're going on to Town Council, Labor Council appointments. The paper we had in the packet didn't list everything, so I followed up on it, and the hourly rate was $165 and $185, depending on the level of the attorney. And I assume that's for, I was just given those 2 numbers, so I'm not sure if that's Labor Council.
No.
That's just
yeah,
our
just-
regular council. So we don't have the numbers on the Labor Council.
It's the same as, I don't think either have increased their rates or retainer in a number of years, so it's the same, it continues to be the same rate.
And so the question is, are you comfortable with retaining our current council? If so, I was looking for a vote.
So Marie, I don't know if you want a discussion first or motion first, but.
You can discuss if there's no motion
Well,
yet.
The reason this wasn't acted on the last time was, I thought we were going to ask for either somebody to be here from the firms or some clarity on who's actually, if we have a primary counsel for our town council. The discussion the last time was, we have multiple town councils, and even today, there was an email from one of the attorneys that said, no, talk to Jamie, which is different from, I thought it was going to be Rosemary. So that still remains the question of who's servicing the town of Long Meadow, or are we just getting moved from person to person?
My understanding, it depends on the issue, on who they're
Yeah.
going to be giving the,
They offered to be here last night, or they offered to be here tonight. I told them I didn't think that was needed, and that's my fault. I forgot that they were, I thought, we had talked to them about it, I thought, in a meeting at Town Hall, but it's a team approach, which they have done since Dave Martell retired. And now, I mean, I think the biggest thing is we kind of latch onto this idea that Dave Martell was town council. Town council has always been Doherty Wallace, the firm. Dave Martell has just been our man. So now Doherty Wallace made the internal change to make it more of a team approach where Rose is the point of contact for like kind of email submissions. Jesse Belcher-Timmy is generally the point of contact for ongoing litigation and land use issues because that's his specialty. Aaron Meehan will get delegated work, but Rose is the point of contact, and she kind of sifts it around. When it comes time to being at a place, it's Jesse. Jesse was at our town meeting. He will be the person at our town meetings. He would have been the person that came here tonight. He does go to our planning board meetings when there's an issue, like related to the Pride Station or something. So, because I think, and I don't want to speak for Paul, but because we deal with them so frequently, there's no uncertainty on our end who we're going to deal with. We still follow the protocol where we reach out to Rose for something new and wait to see to whom it gets assigned, and then going forward, we just talk to that person directly. But it's working really well in my view, and it really isn't. It's not as incongruous as it would seem on its face. It works pretty well, and truthfully, having the different attorneys versus one person has been, I think, productive, and I think we've gotten some efficiency out of that. And you get also the benefit of having four or five, depending on different specialties and different perspectives. So I had concerns, like all of you did, when they went to this model. I had concerns when Mike Schneider I don't know if he made the decision, the firm made the decision, but when it became clear that he was going to be phasing out with his involvement in Long Meadow and do more private sector or private side work, like I said, I share the same concerns, but I actually think it's worked pretty well. I don't know if you feel.
No, I've always known in the recent past, information was always going to Rose, who would disseminate accordingly. So she was always the contact person that I utilized. Unless I heard back from somebody, we start a different conversation. I know Aaron has sent me a lot of opinions, but it was only after original communication with Rose. So.
and I guess, Mark, you had the most experience working with Rose this year. Did you have problems with her?
No, not at all. I mean, it was quite thorough, and there was lots of, nights, weekends, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have a problem. I was just concerned because I saw, 2 or 3 different names, and as long as I think we can make that work, that's fine.
Okay.
But it's different from what we've done in the past.
Place a motion on the table that we approve the council appointments for FY 2020 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is this
That's
for both the
this to make a discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
For discussion. Just, we've talked about Doherty Wallace. I just want to say that we've been in collective bargaining, and Gordon Quinn from Sullivan Hayes Quinn has also been, he doesn't come, we don't have him in the bargaining sessions anymore because most of the stuff is about non-legal issues. But when we've had issues that have come up, he's been right there and turned stuff around really fast for us. So I just want to, we don't talk much about Labor Council, but I want to endorse Gordon as well.
Yeah, and they also work in the same fashion. I mean, an email will go to Gordon, he may have an associate get back to you for the research, so they kind of work in the same fashion.
Yeah.
So is that motion, Richard, for
It
Town
was
Council and
for-
Labor Council?
Yeah, town council and labor
Okay.
council.
Any further discussion on the appointments? All right, all those in favor? All right, thank you very much. All right, let's move on to change of local election hours. I know Mark was concerned about that. I talked to our town clerk, and she said it is true that the election hours, and I think I spoke to you, Jackie, and she said the election hour, our local election starts at 8, and our regular elections start at 7. So there was some confusion, and all we need to do is to have a vote to switch, and it's going to be a bylaw change. So if we vote we want that to occur, then it would have to go to our council, who would put together a bylaw for the next town meeting.
So, Maria, it's weird because it says it shall be from 8 till 8 unless the select board orders it differently.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can just leave the bylaw and just order it differently every year, is the way this reads. I mean,
Yeah.
It reads to me, too.
But
it
it
says,
makes
for
it-
elections which
yeah.
state officers are to be elected, the select board shall order the polls to be open such additional times as shall be necessary to meet the requirements of general offices. And polls shall be open from 8 to 8 in the morning, the hours of operation earlier if ordered by the select board.
But the reason I say is go ahead and we should make a change is because maybe in 2 years, the select board doesn't realize, oh, we had to make that vote, and all of a sudden it's at 8 o'clock, and then you get angry people again. So if people go to the bylaws and they see that, they'll say it was supposed to be at 8. So I know most people don't look at a bylaws, but it would be something I think we should clean up if we're going to keep it
That's
at
fine,
that.
but can we have a motion, can I forward a motion to order the 2020 election to be 7 a.m. and it'll be that way whether we have a bylaw change or not?
Yes.
Okay, I'll offer that motion that the June 2020 municipal election be from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Well, why don't we just change the bylaw? I mean, 'cause-
Well, we can't do that, but we're just going to take care of 2020, and then we can just pass the bylaw request on.
Because we might not be able to get the bylaw done until November.
Oh, I see, okay.
Or actually, if bylaws, we had a big discussion whether we can even do those outside Springtown meeting, bylaw changes. But
Right.
this is a small one, it's not a big one. I think we could try to do it, but if he wants to just confirm,
So-
it's going to be.
Okay, so we'll confirm this, but then then we can also I can make a motion
Yeah.
to make a permanent change. Okay, so, thank you.
All right, all those in favor? All right, are there any other motions?
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to change the permanent voting hours for the polls to open at 7 a.m. and be in the morning and be open till 8 o'clock in the evening.
Is there a second?
Well, I think what you want to do, Tom, is propose that we
Change the
develop a
bylaw.
bylaw for adoption at town meeting to say that,
Okay,
right?
so the motion is to develop a bylaw to present at town meeting to change the poll opening hours from 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning. They would still close at 8 p.m.
All right, all those in favor?
Was it ever
Oh,
seconded?
was there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, okay, all those in favor? Okay,
Right.
thank you. And so, could you put that on the list of where we're going to go? Also, other bylaws that people are interested in changing, let's just start bringing them up because I don't want to dump them all at the last minute on the staff.
You know, I'll have Deb put together a timeline for when all that stuff is due, petitions and things like that,
Okay.
and maybe get it to you for the next meeting.
That sounds good, okay. All right, and now we're moving on to town manager search. There were a couple of issues I wanted us to decide tonight, and one was the committee, and the other was some issues on the advertisement that our Bernie, our search manager, is looking for. So why don't we start with looking at the composition of the committee? Everyone was given a list of what happened so far.
Okay.
All right, so we did not hear from a lot of the committees, but Bernie sent a memo out to everybody requesting that we keep it below the 13. And so right now, we're at 8, I think, and So, any concerns with the 8, or did you want to add a 9? Mark?
Yeah, I have concerns with the 8 or the 9. You know, whether we were 12 or 13, I don't seem to recall. I thought we were 12. But, I had a chance to talk to Bernie about it because I said, you know, we have natural constituencies. We also, you know, wanted to try to get each select board to appoint somebody, and maybe a couple of people at large. And Bernie's comment to me was his concern about a large committee was their ability to get them all to meet at one time. And I think that shouldn't be a constraint on the number of people we have. That, you know, if we're convinced or determined or decide that we want to have a search committee, we appoint, whether it's 10 people, 12 people, or 13 people, and we call, and the majority of them wants to meet a certain time. You know, I know it's August. The deal was we talk to people in advance to see if they're available. I'd rather include people to broaden the constituency than exclude people from this opportunity. And so, you know, based on Bernie saying his objection was trying to get them all in the room together, I think we're better off having an initial screening team that's larger.
Well, you know, right now, the only thing that's missing is the at-large, because on the initial thing I put in everyone's packet, there were a lot of question marks because a lot of the committees never got back to me showing interest.
No, but Marie, I mean...
Well, who would you add to the list?
It's not who I'd add to the list. I think we talked about what the list was. I think a school committee appointment, a finance committee, and a planning board appointment, because they're elected committees, they ought to get somebody appointed to it. And if they choose not to, that's their
No one ever got back to me.
And that's fine, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't leave a seat at the table for them if they want to appoint somebody. If they don't want to appoint somebody, that's fine. I think the other thing we said was that we were going to have a representative from from the town employees, whether it's a department head or something like that, right? We had one.
Well, we had Paul. I think the board talked about whether we were going to have an employee, and there was a discussion.
No, I think it was Paul.
Yeah, Paul's on the list.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul's a department head. So you were saying finance is missing, planning's missing. Who else is missing from the list that you prefer?
School committee, finance, planning.
Okay, school committee's on there.
Paul Pasturzik. The list I got, Marie, that you just sent,
Yeah.
that was in the packet, was the old list.
I think it was the
Yeah,
old
I
list.
got
So
the same
here's who
list.
came through so far. Yeah.
Marie, I
So-
don't know if you could send us a copy of that.
Yeah, I was
list,
just trying to
'cause
look for that now.
that's not what
Okay.
showed up in our packet.
So,
Town manager, search committee,
But
okay.
when I look at groups, of course, the perfect group, when you're looking at small groups, is about 8 people. And in order to get 8 people, you usually have 10 people, because there's always some people who aren't going to show. So I guess in some ways, I
know
would support Mark's point that if there were spots for at least a couple more people, that way we'll end up with 8. I can't imagine all 10 are going to show up, especially in the summer. We're asking
Okay,
people to show
I
up in
can't
the
seem to find the list of the actual people that called in, so let me give it to you, unless you want me to type it right up. So,
Why don't you just read it so people at home
okay,
can...
Mark Gold recommended Arlene Miller. Richard Foster had Ryan Shanks, Mark Strange, Liz Bone, myself, Marie Angelides, Mary Beth Bergeron, Tom Lakusha, David Russell. COA voted in Phil Hallahan. School committee requested Armin Ray. As a department head, we discussed having Paul Pasturzik. And those finance, I didn't not hear back from. Planning, I did not hear back from.
Marie,
Yes.
I was at the most recent planning board, had a kind of a quick meeting the other morning, and I do believe they deputized Bruce Colton for that.
Oh, they never
Yeah.
contacted me.
too.
And they asked, quite frankly, for whatever it's worth, they asked me about their involvement in this, and I talked, because the town manager is also director of planning and community development, that the planning board's participation was, I think, highly important. Beyond being elected officials, there's a direct role between the town manager and the planning board, so they did put Bruce on that.
Did finance get back to you? Because they never got back to me.
They didn't get back to me. I'm just curious who you might have sent it to.
I sent it to Paul Santinello, who said he was handing it over to the next person.
Okay, yeah, right, 'cause, okay.
Yeah, and he said he would get back to it.
Mari.
Huh?
I think Andrew Lamb was designated the person in charge now.
So I should call Andrew?
You should call Andrew,
Okay.
and, I have another question on whether they need to convene a meeting before the 15th, so, if we can get it on their agenda to meet.
Okay. So that gets us up to 10.
That'd be great. Yeah, if we put Bruce Colton on there, that'd be great.
Yeah, so
And
put
then,
Bruce.
Was there any thought of having quote-unquote at-large people? I thought we had talked about,
Well, so we talked about possibly putting 2 at-large. We also talked about Rebecca Townsend as a town moderator being on there. And who else did I have on that list, the original list that I sent to everyone?
I just,
there's some-
And,
there's
oh,
some-
I thought it would be interesting to have, or helpful to have, Marty O'Shea, because he does a lot of work with the town manager. So those were some of the possibilities for 11th person. I hate to go up to 13, though.
the problem with Marty is he's a employee of the school committee. I mean, I love the guy, but I'm not sure that that's,
When it was the other way, I was on the committee, when they were recruiting for superintendent.
How many members were on that committee?
There were a bunch.
I mean, more than 10?
I honestly don't remember that. I know that, I don't know if I was in a separate interview, but I know that they came out and sought the town input from me specifically when it was a superintendent search.
It just, in my experience, anything beyond 9 gets unwieldy. It gets difficult for everybody to contribute. And I think that rings true with Bernie saying we should limit it to 7. I think going beyond 9 is, everything we're doing, I mean, this list could be 25 people long, right? I think going beyond 9, we're doing a disservice to everybody on the committee because we're limiting their ability and their time to contribute. That's just my experience. And
One of the things Bernie did request is he said when he works with the town manager search committee, since it is even anything above the 7 he was requesting, is that he sets up certain dates. He says, I can't get everybody to agree to these dates. That's always the biggest problem. And he says, and we can't just wait for everyone to be available or you'll never get it done.
So,
So-
just as a thought bubble,
Uh-huh.
maybe do what Tom said, pick 10 or 11 people, and then have Bernie set 3 days, and whoever can make those 3 days, whoever can commit to those 3 days, that's your committee.
right.
All right, so if we put in 11th person, do we pick a Rebecca? Do we pick a Marty? Do we pick a at-large person? Or are we missing a committee? How does people feel if we go with the 11th?
I think we should go with Rebecca.
All right, so is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to include Rebecca on the town manager search committee.
Is there a second?
Why would it have to be a motion?
I don't know.
Well, because I want consensus. I mean, if
Well,
he
you-
says,
You don't have consensus on all these people.
I know, but I'm talking about, I'd like to take a bite at a time to the
You take all
11th
the bites you
person.
want. You don't have consensus
Marie,
on
why don't we
this
just get a
list.
motion for the 11 names?
Well,
Let me go ahead with this way. Okay, so for the 11th, is a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay.
11th.
For the 11th person, it could go several ways. We can just name a person, or it can be an at-large. He says he wants to go for Rebecca. All those in favor of the 11th person being Rebecca, not the full list?
Has anybody talked to her about availability?
Yes, yeah. She's back in town, because I'm dealing with her on a dialogue
That's
thing.
right, yeah, she was gonna
Yeah,
be
she's
gone.
back in town by
She'll be-
August 1st. All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, or no, sitting on the question?
Because I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Vote this in. We
All
didn't
right.
vote the other ones then, so I
Now-
find this irrelevant.
Now I'm going to the others. We shouldn't vote in the ones everyone chose because we all agreed to that process. Is everyone happy with the committees we've chosen?
I don't agree. I think we should vote on this group of 11 people now. And I'm acknowledging that Tom and Mark and you and Richard got to appoint somebody, and I'm doing that as part of the process. But I think there needs to be a motion to accept 11 people.
Okay, so we'll
The
go
11,
right.
not individuals.
Right.
Yes, okay, so we'll go for the
No,
full
the
thing,
individual-
right? No? So do you have a motion to accept the whole?
No, I'll move we approve as a as a town manager search committee, Arlene Miller, Ryan Shanks, Liz Bone, Mary Beth Bergeron, David Russell, Phil Hallahan, Armin Ray, Paul Pasturzik, Bruce Colton, Rebecca Townsend, and somebody to be appointed by the finance committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So,
Do you have a
I guess what
comment?
I would have, because when we said, if Bernie does believe that the most challenging part is the dates, and you want to take the strategy of put out 3 dates that he can make it, and whoever can make those dates is going to be the committee,
Yes.
right? If the
Well,
board, if the board has consensus on that approach,
Yes.
then I guess what I would do is I would nominate those 11 people for the search committee. Once you hear back from Bernie that these 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people have committed to those dates, then you appoint those
No,
people to the search committee.
That's process. Let Bernie, well, first, let's get the people that we have appointed.
But once you appoint them, they are subject to open meeting law, open record law, all that other stuff.
Right,
And
they
then you
are.
have quorum issues, and that some of them may not end up being on the committee. And so
Well,
if you-
he's going to decide on his quorum.
Okay, that's fine.
That's all he's going to go is with the quorum. All right, all those in favor? All those opposed?
What was the motion?
To accept the appointment of
I
these
thought we
people.
already voted on that.
No.
Except the appointment of these people.
Okay.
I'm moving too fast for him.
No.
I gave him pizza.
no,
Shouldn't have given
yeah,
pizza.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Were you in favor of that, Richard?
Yeah, we're making this way bigger than it needs to be.
So now we have, we're going to tell Bernie he can manage his town manager search committee to the most efficient way he feels possible, which means dates are given out to the best of everyone's ability. If they can't make the dates, we understand the active group might be smaller.
But Stephen's point was valid. You just appointed these. This is a committee now.
Yes.
And there's quorums, and there is privacy, and all that other stuff is in there. So Bernie can't manipulate this group anymore. He can't suddenly say, I've got 6 people, it's a quorum, or 3 people, it's a
No,
quorum.
he needs, he's going to need.
6 people's a quorum. This is
6
a lot of
people's a
people.
quorum.
So
He
he's
will
going to
need a
have to
quorum.
honor that part.
Yes, he'll need
Okay.
6 people on
Okay.
it.
And
That's
very
nice.
frankly, if you only got 3 people, I wouldn't want him to hold the meeting. But I checked with at least the person I asked, are you going to be here? And I assume we all did, because that's what we were told to do.
Yeah,
And Marie,
yeah.
what did Bernie say about having a select board person as a participant, as a liaison?
Crazy job.
He said that, I think we talked about it, I'm not sure where it went. He said that you can ask Bernie directly about liaison, because I really don't remember. I'm trying to remember, we discussed that as a possibility, and he usually has a strong hand in managing the group, but I don't think he said he had any problem with a liaison to it.
Okay.
But if you could talk to Bernie about it, and then maybe we could bring it up the next meeting, because I
Yeah,
really don't have the information on that.
yeah. I had no phone reception last week at all.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't get to talk to Bernie.
Lucky you.
Okay.
Lucky, I know, a whole week. I had to pay extra for it, too.
Did we have a liaison before? No.
I was the
Yeah,
liaison.
but that was to the search. That
Search
was- that was
committee.
a different,
No, I was at every committee meeting, and I was actually the chair of it. And then the Collins Center did not show up at all the meetings.
right.
But
This
I
one's
think,
different,
I
though.
think
We've
this
got a-
might be different.
we got a
Bernie.
private recruiter
again,
that's doing this.
Bernie, we can talk to Bernie about what he feels about that liaison piece, and we can bring it up for a vote next time. The other thing Bernie asked us to make a decision on was the 2 pieces on how many years of service and the salary to put in the ad. And I think he said, I sent it out to everyone, was it 5 years? Recommended 5 years plus?
Yes, 5
Because
plus.
last time we put it in way too high and we could never meet it. It was 7 to 10. And he said, especially since we have such a high turnover in the state of 20 spaces being opened up by town managers retiring, he recommends 5 plus, and he recommends plus and minus 150. Is there a motion to approve or
It was
discussion?
145.
Oh, did he say 145?
145 is
Yeah,
what
it
he
seemed like
said.
I
That was
read
the last one, let me
145.
see.
Plus or minus 145.
He and I were going back and forth, so he came
What does
out with,
plus or minus mean?
oh, it could be below or above. Yes.
But, I mean, Stephen, what does plus or minus mean to somebody who's applying for that kind of a job?
You
It
wanna
could be
get
higher,
more.
it could be lower, right?
It means you want above that number, and they're going to offer you below that number, is what that means.
That's probably right.
And if you're not going to do a range, sometimes, I mean, this is worded, if you guys read the Beacon and read the ads in the Beacon,
Yeah.
they say prior manager was making X dollars, or they'll say salary up to X dollars, or they do this. My sense of it is that this is probably the right approach for this position out here.
Okay, so you're right, it's 5+ for experience, with a master's degree in public administration or equivalent, and then suggested salary posted at 145 plus or minus, with some opportunity for higher or lower depending on qualifications. Is there a motion to accept his 2 recommendations?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Any other questions on the town manager search other than Tom's? Yes.
Can I give a brief update on the interim?
Oh, yes.
So we did get a draft agreement for an interim town manager. I did get a sample from Managers Association. Paul's taking a look at it. I'm taking a look at it as well, just from a administrative standpoint. I think there's some discussion of what of the section 5.2 of the charter authorities will be vested in the interim town manager versus maybe delegated to other municipal employees, or not.
Or you mean Paul taking some of it?
Paul taking some of it.
And the interim, so you're talking about changing the position?
No, just the authority, maybe not giving the interim town manager all of the authorities. I mean, you can, under the charter, but there's I'll give you, the easiest example is long-range fiscal planning. You're not gonna have an interim town manager do long-range fiscal planning. So it is that authority that needs to be in the agreement now.
Well, why wouldn't you have it there, Stephen?
Because it's just an interim thing. I mean, it's, the board can limit it, so this is a conversation he and I kind of started to have, but, I mean, it's fine to just put them all in there if you want.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys, ultimately.
Well, I would like you to have all authority, and if we start limiting our interim, then that takes some of that stuff out of your hands too, which is,
Well, I don't think, I think it's gonna have to be one person designated as who is gonna have the authority. So that's why the discussion is coming up.
to put that authority in your hands.
On certain aspects of the 10 or 12 different responsibilities that are listed. Again, I went through, Steve and I didn't have a chance to go through the checklist, but I identified certain ones that I think it would be easier if I handled on a day-to-day basis, and a number that would go to the acting or interim town manager. We just haven't settled on which ones exactly are where.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with Paul deciding what authority he wants to retain. Do you want to see the list? This board want to see the list on the 15th? Or do we want to give authority to Paul to decide where he wants to divide the duties?
Marie, I think it's, the bigger issue for me is our interim town manager is only part-time. And it's when that person's not here, you're always only a phone call away, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, somebody may need to be signed or whatever it is, and I think that's the bigger issue of what you make sure. So maybe you give everything to the interim town manager with us delegating it to Paul during those times when they're not around, or something like that, because we got to make sure that the town is covered essentially, 5 days a week, if not 7 days a week.
I mean, that's fine, but when you say when the interim town manager is not here, is that physically in Long Meadow, or,
Oh, yeah, I mean, like you said.
You're right, there are certain things that need to keep moving with signatures, and to wait 2 or 3 days is gonna, hamper.
Right, that was my intent by what I said,
Okay.
Paul, right.
Tom?
Well, I would like to see a memo from Paul, how he'd like to see the split, and I think we could vote on that, because you're right. I mean, I agree, long-term planning, he doesn't need to worry about that.
So Paul, why don't you put something together for
Yeah,
us?
Steve and I will look at those.
Now, is Jay expecting a signed contract before the 15th, though?
I don't think that's needed. I did speak with him today to kind of figure out,
Okay.
to make sure he's going to be here on the 15th. I know he's going to come, he's going to try and be here on the 11th.
11th,
Get
yes.
to meet some people, and then he'll communicate to you what he thinks his start date is going to be. He had reached out to me to ask to have kind of some, and Paul and I have some preliminary discussions, kind of set like what's happening and all that other stuff, so.
All right, so that would be great, Paul, if you could pull that together, and he will be coming to the select board meeting on the 15th. to speak to us. He said he was going to stop in earlier, and so I told him about the groundbreaking, so he's going to be there. So if you're at the groundbreaking, you'll be able to meet him then also. But he will definitely be at our meeting to answer all our questions. If you could get that to us ahead of time, before the packet goes out even,
Yep.
so that everyone on the board is comfortable with the list that you've created.
Have you possibly reached out to this person that we're hiring to ask him some of the questions that we're discussing in here?
Which ones?
Such as planning authority and this, that, the other, see what his feelings are too.
Okay.
We are hiring the person as an interim town manager.
We start, and it's really more an operation, it's not really an authority thing, it's an
Right.
operational thing, like
Right.
what authority, like the ability to sign a hiring request form, what authority in the charter does that come from? Because that's something that the interim town manager is probably gonna have to do. So, we just haven't coordinated from an operational standpoint what that all looks like.
Well, the
And-
charter
and all we're
doesn't
gonna-
separate any of the
Right.
duties, so for the intern.
Right, but there are the authorities, and then there's the stuff that happens every single day that
Right.
derives from those authorities. That's what we're trying to sort out.
Okay.
I mean, I was gonna make my recommendation to Paul, he's gonna make his recommendation to you. If the board would like Paul to get input from Jay before he gives it to all of you, I think that since we are negotiating a contract, I think that's a pretty reasonable approach.
Yeah, because I mean, the charter doesn't address any reduction in authority for an intern or acting person.
Yeah, I mean, right now, if you just did section 5.2 and didn't mess with it at all, then when he's not here, Paul is the acting town manager,
Right.
would still do what he does today, which is be the town manager in the absence of the interim town manager.
Right.
It's more, again, figuring out operationally what's that right mix. Because he's not gonna do all the same stuff that the full-time town manager does.
Might do more.
What?
Might do more.
He might do, yeah. And better.
I just think some of those listings there are kind of mundane things, quite
Yeah.
honestly. There's a few of them like insurance policies, make sure the town is protected and things like that. You know, I don't know if you're gonna want him to look at insurance policies. We've had it umpteenth years
Yeah.
now. Kind of, it's run, it has its process and everything like that. You know, it's little things like that that we're more interested in.
But wouldn't it be better if they just worked it off behind the scenes on that? Because the charter is pretty straightforward on what its interpretation. I'd like to be better off if we didn't make rulings. I mean, it sounds like we could be bumped up against the charter.
I mean, it actually could be done that way because
Yeah.
the charter does say it could be designated.
Yeah.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we, instead of looking at it as the charter approach, why don't we talk about individual, like, responsibilities, setting aside the authorities, and maybe that's the recommendation, is the responsibilities, that, because you have to give Jay his scope of work, his responsibilities that he's responsible for under his contract. And you can either list the charter authorities, or you can just say, here's these areas we want you to be responsible for. You can use all these authorities in section 5.2, but we only want you to apply them in these responsibilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess.
Because, I mean, at his hourly rate, I wouldn't want him reading all these contracts that we haven't changed in a long period of time, saying, well, I just want to review them. Not really.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right, Board of Health, I was going to put them on, but are we
They're
waiting?
just out in the hall.
Oh, they are? Oh, well, let's put them on next.
Hey,
So-
Beverly?
Or maybe they,
They are. I saw Beverly. Come in.
Someone's there, all right.
What was that about, Maureen?
Shared Health Services.
Paul, you still gonna do the
Agreement.
presentation?
Yeah. Just going down to, jumping down to that.
Are you still gonna use that?
Yeah, I think, you want me to put that up on the screen, that little 4-page?
Well, we're going to do the,
Yeah, but after-
yeah.
Have a seat.
Hi. And so the next thing we're discussing is the Shared Health Services Agreement draft. Thank you for coming in. If you could just state your name and position.
Beverly Hirshhorn, I'm your health director.
Mary Pat Toy, member of the Board of Health.
You might want to put the, I'm not sure, that's for people at home to hear you.
Mary Pat Toy, member of the Board of Health, Long Meadow.
Thank you.
Robert Rappaport, Chairman of the Board of Health, Long Meadow.
So you want to, this was in our packet, you want to give us a little rough idea about,
Right, I don't
The
know whether-
parameters of the agreement?
Have you received the proposal from East Long Meadow, just some of the drafts.
What, is that what we have in here, Paul?
The latest draft of the IMA was what was in the packet.
Okay.
Intermunicipal agreement, Long Meadow, East Long Meadow Public Health Partnership, version 10.
Yeah. We discussed this at our meeting last week, and while we're thinking, in the long term, it may be a good idea, and there are some good parts to it, the concern that we had as a board right now is that East Long Meadow is a much bigger municipality than we are. And currently, I think our Board of Health, since 1983, when it became a separate entity, has done a terrific job. And I think that we're concerned, one of the things we're concerned with is that there are some provisions in here where we may have to pay East Long Meadow for their services. We're concerned a little bit about how you determine who would get priority. Right now, if we have a problem with the Board of Health in Long Meadow, we can deal with it. If we have to go into an agreement with another municipality, we may have to say, okay, this is what our problem is, and they may say, well, we've got something bigger. So we're concerned a little bit about the dilution of services, and we don't want the level of services to drop. I think that for a small town, and considering the board that we have a Board of Health where one person wears several hats. Health agent, the health inspector, and currently Beverly is doing all the clerical work. She has no secretary. So, prior to meetings, she has to take time to go ahead and assemble all these papers. East Long Meadow has a fully functioning Board of Health now. They have, I guess, an inspector, an agent, they have clerical help, theirs is they get a small stipend, we volunteer, and I think given all the factors that we put into this, that it's not really a fair deal for us at this point. We haven't ruled it out, but there's some things that we would like to kind of see how they want to handle it. And I think that any of the costs that might be incurred by going into this might be better off if we could get some funding for some help for Beverly. I don't think that it's fair to really assess the job that we're doing based on the fact that sometimes we're scrambling around. We have to try to find help to help us out. So we're not really comparing two entities, and it's not like just merging two things that are similar. So what we would be interested in proposing is seeing if there'd be a way for us to get a little bit of financial help so that we can get some of the services that we're lacking and just bring it up a little bit so that then when we do talk with East Long Meadow, we're comparing, similar boards. So that's sort of where we stand now. We have a printout that we had made of some of the concerns, which I'll leave for you. I want to find out how the select board feels about this.
Okay. Beverly, did you want to talk about some of the things that you need help on, that he's discussing needing funding?
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm not going to be working for the Long Meadow Board of Health forever, given
Beverly,
my age.
come on.
Given my age. So there, this came up as really after some long thinking of looking at how public health is delivered statewide and nationally, and there is a consensus which was actually affirmed in a recent study. It was called the Governor's Special Commission on Local Boards of Health, which has just come out with its preliminary findings. I've got a draft. In fact, I have a section of it dealing with cross-jurisdictional sharing. And it is recommending highly cross-jurisdictional sharing of one type or another. It doesn't necessarily have to be a district. It could be total sharing or partial sharing of services to improve quality of the public health services rendered and efficiency. So that's the perspective that I came in with, thinking as a succession plan whenever that would take place, and realizing that at this point, at least there is a functional health department in East Long Meadow. At least we have a partner to dance with at the prom, but for many years they did not have a functioning health department, so really there was not very much to talk about. So that's where I'm coming from as a health professional, seeing how much things have changed since I joined the Board of Health in '83 and professionally came into this position part-time in '87 and full-time in '93. So the world has undergone a lot of changes. And so that's the perspective that I'm coming with. I try to keep up with my field. I'm on a number of professional boards, and I see that as what's happening statewide and nationally. And my hope is that this department, as well as the police department, could raise the quality of services that it provides and go for accreditation, which is the gold standard, which I firmly believe the residents of Long Meadow deserve. What do I need? I think the problem is when there's one town doing it all, there's a duplication of services. So I'm doing a budget, I'm preparing things for licensees, I'm thinking about grants, I'm envisioning changes that need to be made in the way that services are rendered. But the person who sits over in East Long Meadow is doing the same thing. Not exactly the same, because her Board of Health might have different local regulations and policies. So it is not it is not going to be an exact replica of what that person does, but we go to the same meetings, we attend the same trainings. There's an awful lot of overlap in time spent that could be done more efficiently by one person. I don't know. I think that some additional clerical help might be helpful. I'm currently sharing some services with the building department, clerical services, and when there is less of a demand for her time there, she can give me a little bit more time. And I have to honestly say that several of the other clerical personnel that are up on the second floor of Town Hall have also pitched in and helped when they need to. And I've been trying to patch together clerical help with Bay Path students, senior volunteers, etc. So from time to time, yes, I do need a little bit more clerical help. But it's really a problem because the administrative work in the office takes an awful lot of my time. I'm not getting out. I don't have the time to leave to do the inspectional services, so you just expand the day. You make it a longer day, or you have to use judgment as a professional doing this for a long time as to what inspections I should emphasize, what enforcement actions I should take, or whether I can defer some. I mean, becomes a judgment call on my part as to how to allocate the time so that between 8:30-ish in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, I can produce the best services that are humanly possible. It's not humanly possible for me to provide. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit more clerical might help, but to tell you the truth, it's a function of a lot happening on the scene, a lot of new regulations, federally, state-wise, locally, needs to keep up with changing patterns of provision of services. So there's really nothing you could do for me. I don't know. I mean, it's important to think about the future. We had this idea of a shared services. So if you ask me as a public health professional, that seemed to be the number one option because that would do away with some of the inefficiencies. Mm-hmm. However, there are other ways. I would not suggest replicating the staffing the same way that it is now at the point of time when I leave. I mean, you could. It will be, you'll know exactly what your expenses are going to be. Mm-hmm. You'll have somebody that is dedicated to the town of Long Meadow, but you're going to have a lot of inefficiencies in the way services are provided. Another way may be to have two people, one doing more the administrative, budgeting, administrative work, and maybe someone who just does inspection services
Can I-
with less time. But, I mean, I don't think that's going to be cost efficient for you, and to tell you the truth, in my field, finding personnel is really difficult.
It'll take two people to replace you.
Right. Okay, I was hoping to just give a little bit of background on top of what Beverly was saying. Because the board knows that I've been reporting on this initiative for many months. And so we've been, working with East Long Meadow, trying to come up with this all really started with Beverly, knowing that she was hitting kind of the end of this phase of her career.
Thanks, Steve, you're kind.
And there was a couple things that happened. One of the things was I had given Beverly a directive to find a vendor to do pool inspections, because not only does Beverly inspect our municipal pools, she has to go out to private pools as well, and that's a lot of time.
Country clubs.
Right, a lot of time, quite frankly, in the sun. And so I said, there's got to be a better way to do this, and not to take duties away from Beverly, but just give her more time at what we thought at a more reasonable cost to do, more important work than, testing water. And she tried for weeks and could not find a vendor. And what she ended up reporting to me was that East Long Meadow was adding this capacity, and maybe we could work with East Long Meadow. Now, as the board knows, we work with East Long Meadow daily from an operational standpoint. And I guess, and I don't know if they, Dr. Rapport, I know they're bigger geographically, but from an organizational standpoint, we're almost equal.
No, I didn't mean to imply
Yeah.
that we're inferior. I just think that, we're comparing a number
There
of
are
people.
aspects of it that actually that line up really nicely. The one thing that is somewhat asymmetrical is the health department of East Long Meadow manages a solid waste recycling program. That is a tremendous amount of work that currently our Department of Public Works does, that the East Long Meadow health department manages. One of the things that we really focused on strongly, so when we started this conversation, just to go back to background, we started this conversation of how do we do this better. Maybe a couple of years ago, the new Amy over in East Long Meadow was relatively new. Beverly and I said, hey, maybe this may be an opportunity. Again, as the board knows, there really aren't that many tools in the box for towns to share services in a way that is structured. Paul Healy covers for inspections, or we'll share a ambulance or something like that. But in terms of building a structure, that there's a relationship that comes with obligations, is IMAs and districts. It's pretty, as we've discovered going through the dispatch thing, there's only real two ways to do it. There are health districts throughout. As we also know from dispatch, creating a district is kind of a big deal. And because at the beginning we had the same concerns that I think the Board of Health has articulated, we thought, let's see how far down the path towards an IMA we can explore and see if this works. IMAs are good because they're easy in, easy out.
And that's
Municipal agreement.
Agreement.
Intermunicipal agreement. And East Long Meadow, the town manager, can actually enter into East Long Meadow intermunicipal agreements. Here, the select board can do it. You don't need a town meeting vote. So that's where, and so then over the past number of months, we've kind of gone back and forth and developed this agreement, which I think does two key things. The first is it obligates East Long Meadow to provide the services that are shared by the towns. So we're not going to pay for East Long Meadow's cost to do solid waste recycling. That's not a shared service. But we also didn't prescribe it because the board or the next town manager may say, you know what, we ought to have the East Long Meadow Board of Health take on our solid waste and recycling program as well, because it would free up DPW's time to do other things or whatever. It gives you options. The second thing it did that was really the top priority for both towns was maintaining autonomy for the boards of health to be policy-making and regulatory bodies. And so that is, that's one of the things that we did not change and wanted to enhance. And so the intermunicipal agreement is really an administrative document, and driven in large part, quite frankly, by I know we are under a mandate to try and reduce positions where possible, reduce OPEB liability, create efficiencies, all of those things. And so, as Beverly, I think, has stated, we assessed that we could maintain minimally a satisfactory level of service and potentially save money by doing the shared health model. We plan for the future. So that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of excited about this. The one thing I'll say is when there's areas of uncertainty for the Board of Health, there are questions we just can't answer today. And I think the board has been a part of enough intermunicipal work where there are things that the target you have to hit because it's set by state statute or local bylaw. But you don't always know how you're going to get there because you're two towns working together on something new that you have to kind of figure out as you go. So there are aspects of this that we're going to try and figure out as we move along, which is why the agreement builds in at least quarterly checkpoints where the two town managers need to work together to make sure that the operational side of it is working well, which is no different than I would do with Beverly individually now. So it really, I believe strongly that this can really work for us, but I also know that there are areas of uncertainty that are really unknown until we get into this. And like I said, it's not, once this gets approved, the really effective date is really when Beverly decides, again, she's going to no longer be the town health director. But we have some time between now and then to kind of build an integration plan.
I think that, having been on the job for many years, I really need to sit down and make sure that I have in place a compendium, not only of all the local regulations that were passed over the years, but also administrative interpretations, because the next person is going to want to would want to carry out the wishes of the local Board of Health, and East Long Meadow may interpret state or federal regulations in a slightly different manner. So having, let's say, I haven't really given a firm date, but let's say having a year of time to overlap is really not that long to prepare all these materials and to put my licensees in good shape for the next person to come in.
Any questions for either the Board of Health or Mike?
Yeah, I guess I do. Stephen, and this is more for you. The challenge I always see is one person having two bosses, and in this case, the two bosses are the two town managers. Ultimately, you can't do that. I don't care what you say, you can do. Ultimately, I found that you listen to one person, and who do you listen to? Who's signing my paycheck? And in this case, it's East Long Meadow. So how do you respond to that concern that, if there's a deadline coming up, our pools don't get inspected and theirs do, or whatever it is? How do we deal with that?
So there are triggers in the agreement, again, that compel the health director to mandate that it is mandatory to meet with the town managers. The town managers have to jointly agree on the priorities for the department. The boards of health separately have to work with the health director. So the health director of East Long Meadow will be taking direction from the town of Long Meadow's town manager and the town of Long Meadow's Board of Health when working in Long Meadow. When it is shared things that impact both communities the same, it'll be more of a team effort. But these are the types of things, Mark, that we've spent the most time, in fact, in our discussions with East Long Meadow talking about that very subject. Is there a chance that a human will decide they don't want to do that? Of course. That's why the IMA is easy out. I mean, really, the East Long Meadow is obligating to provide these services. If the Board of Health, if the health director in East Long Meadow just chooses not to, then the town is in default of the agreement, not that employee. And so the town manager who signs that person's check will surely hold that person accountable or get somebody who's going to honor the agreement because it's the town that defaults.
Any other questions? You mentioned that you were going to have quarterly checkpoints, and then with the 2 town managers. Could you give reports, or this would probably be the next town manager? It would be really advantageous to have the town manager give those quarterly reports not only to the select board, but also to the Department of Health, so they'd be able to see how it is functioning.
The select board will get monthly reports like they do now.
Yeah, but you mentioned quarterly checkpoints on the operational side
Right.
that will be done.
Quarterly
with the
getting together
two-
and say, how is this working?
Yes, that's what I'm
Monthly,
interested
the health director will issue reports monthly like Beverly does, so you'll get regular updates and communication
Yeah.
from the health director. But quarterly, we get together and say, how's this working? And then annually, the boards of health get together and say, how is this working? And there's an annual report, and if it just isn't working, or we're not, we feel like we're getting an inequitable amount of service, or wait times for inspections are longer here than there, or all those things, those are things we sort out in these sessions. And again, it's really no cost for
Yeah,
the
and
town.
that's why I think it would be nice to have the Board of Health, either part of those discussions, as you gather information from them to see how they feel the
Their role
checkpoints
is
are
built
going.
into, their role is built into the IMA.
Yeah, but the quarterly, I think it's always good for us to have accountability on a quarterly basis.
But from an operational standpoint, from a policy standpoint, certainly, from an operational standpoint, there are, the roles and responsibilities are defined in the IMA, or they're defined outside the IMA, but they're reflected in the IMA.
Okay, the select board's I'm going to ask for a quarterly report, but it's not going to start for another year, right? And I
Right.
probably won't be on the board, but it would
Well,
just be my recommendation that the
You'll certainly get
quarterly
reports on transition. Now, this isn't up for a vote tonight, but if the board approves it, you would get reports on transition as it goes.
Richard?
What type of redundancy is being built into the program for transition planning? Are they going to have 2 reps over there, or?
Yeah.
They're going to have two inspectors, 1 director, and a sharing of the public health nurse. So
Yeah,
in 40 hours, the nurse will be covering 2 towns.
Yeah, the public health nurse is currently part-time. East Long Meadow doesn't have one. Ours is part-time. So that position, whoever's going to fill it, if it's our public health nurse or another one, is going to be a full-time position. That'll cover both towns.
By the way,
And
there's a
then-
lot of redundancy in that position,
Yeah.
of having to keep up with all sorts of nursing procedures and policies that would be cut to one person.
Yeah. So, and then the other pertains to your question, the clerical support that Beverly receives now, one of the things that we've done is automate a lot of the clerical work that used to be a part of the deal in the past. I think we talked about this, where Sharon in our building department really noted that the Viewpoint software she uses for the building department has similar interface for health permits. So she's kind of built up that electronic capacity. Those hours that she spends supporting Beverly have been set aside mostly because she is our employee for 30-something. She's a full-time Town of Long Meadow employee, and we need her in the building department. But we have hours set aside for her in her work week to support the Board of Health. So we will still have someone who's a Town of Long Meadow employee a part of providing the services, or at least from a clerical standpoint.
Richard?
Yeah, Mr. Rappaport, Dr. Rappaport, in your original talk, you were talking about giving more help over here. Do you have concerns that you haven't expressed for going into this agreement?
No, and that was, I was going to comment after you had finished yours, is that I think the Board of Health sees a lot of merit in this, not just for Beverly, but I think in general. It's just that there were a lot of uncertainties, and it just, as we read it at our meeting, I think it was just updated probably 15 or 20 minutes before our meeting, so we were going on the previous report, is it just seemed like it was weighted, the way it was written now, is weighted more in East Long Meadow's favor, so we just felt we wanted some more time to go through this and see what we were entering into. But as far as overall, the concept, we think makes a lot of sense, so we weren't against it. Okay.
We all support the shared services and resources. We want redundancy and overlap, but there's certain areas that we're concerned about, that Long Meadow represented by Long Meadow, for Long Meadow, and is there any plan to allow constituents to know about this? I know you make the decision, and it's an intermunicipal agreement that you have the right and capacity to decide on, but is there any public comment or do you see any reason for
Well, I
Long
think,
Meadow?
I think the thing is, the select board are elected to be the representatives to review these types of things. We've been talking about it. I've been reporting on it for a number of months. I mean, it is a government administrative function, so it's not like a master plan or something where it's really an operational thing. So, I think we've talked about it here. I think it's been in the newspaper that we've been working on it. So it's not like we're trying to hide. It's just, it's not. We don't manage by committee.
I just want to say, we just got a $50,000 grant to do a community health assessment as a run-in to do the sharing.
Yeah.
Part of a community health assessment is going to all of the key players in the organization, including citizens, and asking them what are their unmet public health needs, or do they perceive of any unmet public health needs. For sure, I have not gone out to the citizens of Long Meadow and asked them what they want, because I'm barely treading water on what the state mandates require of me. So I think part of the process is that they're going to find out that there may be opportunities with a new way of doing business to go out and get other grants to do things in Long Meadow that we have not been able to do before because of our small size, and a lot of grants have minimum population numbers, and because there'll be an administrative person who can devote their time to this kind of...
You made a great point about the community health assessment. I wasn't really aware of what that was, and we were having a discussion about what to apply for in this grant, and it wasn't high on my list. And then when Beverly and Amy Petrovsky from East Long Meadow started talking about what a community health assessment does and the information you get out of it, I said, oh, of course we have to do that first. Of course that should be our top priority. It is really such an essential function, or not an essential function, but it is such an excellent building block for planning for our future public health needs and public health issues. Is it fair to say that we wouldn't have gotten the grant if we weren't engaged in the shared services effort?
Plus, it gives us, you cannot go forward with accreditation, which is what many of our town departments would like to do, unless you have had a recent community health assessment. And they're very expensive. I mean, this is $50,000. I think I would have a lot of trepidation coming to this board and asking them for $50,000 for a study when we're barely covering our mandatory public health our mandates. So it was by virtue of going forward with this process that we were able to get this grant.
And how will you reach out to the community to get that input?
I think they're going to have focus group surveys.
And you expect that in the next year?
Yes, it's going to be done this year before, I think the end date will be sometime in the spring, with the hope that when we get the data from this assessment, we can then develop an action plan to go forward.
Okay, Richard?
Yeah, I wanted to back up a little bit. You had, in your first introductory statement, you were mentioning, and I think Dr. Rappaport said the same thing, about needing additional clerical support. And I never heard that defined as to what the needs were.
Answering the phone would be helpful, and I think we could do that. Part of the problem was that in the process, my office was flooded out, and I had to move to a new location. Higher location. But we need to make sure that there's someone there who could answer the phone when I'm not there and answer simple and repetitive type questions, not the policy issues, but the how-to, or how to apply for a grant, or where you send a check. That's things that take me off of my track. They're collating things, real clerical type duties. I write my own order letters, and because of the fact that orders are legal documents, which you sometimes find their ways into courts of law, I bet there's a need for accuracy in citing regulatory provisions or laws, so that I do myself, and I don't delegate that task to anyone. But more routine matters, it would help if there was somebody there filing
Mark.
such a phone calls.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could ask Dr. Rappaport and Mrs. Toy, or maybe the entire Board of Health, because you'd commented that you got this agreement, or this proposal, 15 minutes, to go back to your committee and take a look at this, and, what would, in a perfect world, what
Right.
might you change, what might you adjust or tweak or whatever it is, and feed that back, and potentially, if it's substantial, something we want to take a
Right,
look
that's what
at.
we did. We had all, had gotten some updates, and then we were handed those out, because as I said, we're going off the prior one, so at our next meeting, we will. This is
Yeah, I
something
think that'd be interesting for
Yeah.
at least me as a member of the select board to find out what your take is on this.
I think it's operationally, it's a really scary, the concept is good, the operation has a lot of unknowns to it. And so, actually, if I was in a position of being the new health director, I'd have a little bit of trepidation as to how I was going to go forward with this, how I would account for time. I'd be a little bit concerned. But the only thing that I can say is that we're going to try over the next year to integrate ourselves as best as we can to make it very clear what I've done here. Maybe the next person can improve. I'm sure the next person can improve upon it. It's times are changing, but operationally it's going to be a challenge, and I think we're going to need a lot of feedback constantly. You're going to need a lot of feedback constantly from the chair and the members of the Board of Health and from the new town manager as to how things are going. But the good thing about it is it's not a marriage. I notice there's an escape clause. So hope we never have to do it. In fact, you might just love it and wonder why you never didn't do it earlier.
Yeah, what took us so long, right?
In fact,
When would they want to come
Richard,
back?
when do you think you'll have, so that document that Mark was talking about you putting together, it really should come to me so I can get it to the whole board? And when do you think you would be?
I don't know. We didn't set another date yet.
Okay.
We're just trying to figure out what happens. Is it because of everybody's schedules on the board? We try to lump together as many issues as we can, so we don't have to have somebody come in for a 15-minute meeting here and there, because it's hard to get with the other doctors' schedules. It's very difficult to get everybody to come together. We've had meetings sometimes at 6:45 in the morning to do this. So as soon as we can get together, see what other issues we have to discuss, I don't have a date, but as soon as we do, I'll let you know, and we will make sure that we bring updates, because that is on the agenda.
And do we have a time limit on when we have to?
I was
You're not
hoping
looking
to-
for a vote on this
I was
now?
looking for a vote on the 15th.
Oh, you were looking for a vote on the 15th. That's when we need to get the next step moving, so do you think you'd be able to get your?
So my question is, how many other drafts are going to come? Is that the final draft number 10?
I actually
or-
think a new one was circulated today, to be honest with you.
See, so that's
We're,
part of our-
I mean, it's really tweaks of what we're doing. I mean, we spent a lot of time working on this, and everyone has, I mean, the one thing I'll say is, I disagree with Beverly. The whole reason we're doing this is because we don't feel like the next person can improve upon what's been done. I think the opposite is more the case. We're going to have a real struggle to meet the same service level, even with more support. So that's why working with East Long Meadow, we think makes a lot of sense. The commitment from both towns as well as the state, who has attended, a representative of the state Department of Public Health, she's attended a lot of our meetings and been a part of all the email correspondence and review drafts. There's a lot of commitment to making sure we can do this right, and manage the uncertainties, or let's say manage the uncertainties, or eliminate as many uncertainties as we can as we go. I think, like I said, I believe in the commitment is there, and I think the problem-solving ability is there too. There may be operational tweaks about lines of communication and stuff like that, but the fundamental building blocks of this document are retain the authority of the local boards of health for their own communities, and guarantee that the level of service that we are required to provide is done. And a lot of the other stuff is more, how we do it. But those are the two primary goals.
I also, this week, I'd like to have a conversation with a colleague of mine another conversation, I've actually had a number of them, who is in the shared health district of Wakefield, Melrose. These aren't little towns like up in the Berkshires, so I think she's been at this for 3 or 4 years now, and perhaps she could bring me a list of things that were challenging and things that went through very easily, and I'd be happy to provide it both to you and this.
Yeah, there are 16 of these in the state, so the wheel has already been invented. We just need to get insight from those other districts of how to implement.
And if we can't get it by the 15th, I know that one of the issues is you want to be involved with the discussion. Could you always call in for a portion on the following
Sure.
meeting, the first or something?
Yeah.
If you have trouble
You mean
getting
the guy
there.
that's leaving us?
Yes, he's going to be on a beach maybe,
Yeah.
and then call us from there.
I know he wants to get by the 15th. I also think it's very important that the people in front of us are in full agreement with what's going forward, because they will be here when this document is implemented, so.
So if you can't make the 15th, there's a little wiggle room there to make it a little easier for you, getting back to us.
I'd just like to say that, Beverly is very modest and humble and underplays everything she does. I've been on this board since it became, as I told you, a separate entity from the select board in '83 when Beverly and I came out. And I've just seen how great a program we've developed for the residents of the town of Long Meadow, primarily because of Beverly's hard work. And I think the main concern through all of this is just how are they going to keep the bar at the same level when somebody else takes it? And we don't want to turn it over and then see it just go any differently. So that's why we want to make sure that before we commit to that, and I think our Board of Health has done a great job over the years with all the new regulations, and just providing good services for the residents, that we just want to make sure that doesn't change. So that, I think, is a main
I
deterrent.
agree, Bob. I think, Beverly, you are really humble. At first, I was thinking it's going to take 2 people to replace you, like Marie was saying, and now I'm starting to think it's going to take 3 people to replace you.
Well,
She's doing the work of 3 people now. It really is.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's actually been a pleasure. Not very many people have as their vocation their avocation. So it was something that I truly loved, and it's something that I came into as a young adult, and I've stuck with it, through all these years. But we all have changes in life, and we have to learn to accommodate to these changes, not necessarily a lowering of services, but in my experience here in Long Meadow, the program has evolved in many ways with so many unfunded mandates that I couldn't even list them. Plus, things that the board here has felt really important, and to add as special town regulations to, in addition to the state mandates, where they felt that they had local needs. So, there's been changes over time. It's just I'm trying to keep it at an even keel. But it's going to be a very challenging future with pressures brought to bear from the state and federal government, and especially in light of the governor's special commission, you might have legislative changes because this report is going to our legislators. There's going to be changes, and it's going to be there's going to be rough going for a while until we figure out how to provide public health services in a more efficient and more modern manner.
Well, thank you for all your work, the board and Beverly. Any last questions for them? No. Thanks again for coming tonight, and we will.
Thank you for your faith in
We'll wait
us.
to hear from you on when you're ready to get that document to us, and I can get it on the agenda, okay? Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the next issue is the tax ceiling legislation draft. I wanted to give a little report on that. Let me get the,
Your communication plan?
oh, I'll do that last. That's like,
Well, we said
that's
when
like
we set up,
1
we
minute.
want to do it
You
now.
go and run through that quick while we set this up.
Oh, okay. I put down the communication plan, and that's something that I want to start as the chair of the select board, because I think a lot of times what we do here, oh, thank you very much. I'll make a copy and make sure everyone gets scanned in and gets a copy of it. Thank you.
Good to see you.
So I think one of the problems is we get all this work done here on the board, and it really doesn't get out to the community. The residents don't find out what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing up a little blurb of everything that we've done here, and things like discussion about this community health assessment that's begun, the $1 million grant, all of this wonderful information to get out there. And then I'm going to ask people to send me emails, and they can be part of either an email blast, or they can actually go on the select board and they will see a link to the newsletter of what's, so if someone has something you want to add to that, whether it's your subcommittee on streetlights, you want to put something else in, or Richard, when you want to follow up and tell us what's really happening with the $100,000 planning grants, send something in to me. I'm going to put it together in a draft form, send it out to everyone so you can tell me if I've misstated something, and then hopefully within 24 hours of this meeting, it's going to be available for people. And other places that you feel it needs to be placed, someone did make an interesting comment, is that we should probably send it out to the high school students. Let the high school students know what's going on. Maybe they'll put it in their, either in their little newspaper or the link, so they know that's available and what we're doing here on the board. Because there's so many times that people say, well, I didn't know that was happening, and it's a surprise, I'm not happy with it, and at least that information will get out there. This is an evolving plan. If other people have other ideas, one of the things I was thinking of maybe adding to the bottom of it is a list of events that are happening in town, because we do not do that on our town calendar. So little things that are coming up this week, whether it's in the schools, having concerts, or a lecture is being held by the Historic Society, we'll try to collect those, and that will be part of the newsletter too. So that was just a quick blurb of what I'm trying to do this year as chair, and hopefully if it works out well, it'll just become a regular process everyone will follow through on. So that was just a quick blurb on the communication plan, and now we're going to talk about the tax ceiling. We've had a task force in place for over a year now. I think we started in February of 2018, and we've had representatives from various committees as well as the community trying to figure out how we best approach our tax ceiling problem. I think I've asked Paul to put together a short 4 slides of exactly what our tax slide problem is. Mark has put in an incredible, in-depth analysis so people can understand maybe a little bit more, which is happening. That's in the packet, and they can look that up. I'm going to put a link to that in the newsletter so they can hit the link and they'll get all 14, 15 slides. Yes, so he definitely goes into depth on what our problem is here in town. So I'm going to first have Paul talk a little bit about where we are, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the ideas that are coming out of the task force. We're not done yet, but we felt it was really important at this point in time to come in from the board and get some consensus on it. And right now, Paul Pasterchik's on the tax ceiling task force, Stephen Crane, Mark Gold, and myself. All right, thank you, and go ahead, Paul.
Right, very quickly, again, Maria did ask me to prepare something very quickly just to give people an overview of kind of where we are, how Proposition 2.5 works, and how it's impacting the town of Long Meadow. Basically, there are 2 constraints with Proposition 2.5. The first one being an annual increase of the levy limit of 2.5%, and that's of the prior year's levy limit. That gives us roughly about $1.2 million in annual revenue. The town of Long Meadow has been living within those means without an override since the year 2000 and fiscal year 2008. And there does not seem to be an issue with that aspect of Proposition 2.5 at this point in time. We've been able to live within those means. What we are confronted with is the secondary constraint of Proposition 2.5, whereas that once our levy limit gets up to a point where it is 2.5% of our assessed valuation, or a tax rate of $25 excluding debt exclusions, at that point in time, we would not be able to raise taxes any further beyond that. So that's typically what we are looking at, and have been watching this for the last probably 5 years or so. And we want to make sure that we are prepared, or try to make sure we do not hit that $25 tax limitation at any point in time, because it would be devastating to the town with regards to the services and just the way that the town operates. Basically, from a historical perspective, you can see this line right here is roughly what I'm talking about, the annual 2.5% increase. It's roughly about $1.2 million annually. Our tax rate is basically just a mathematical equation dividing by the levy limit by the assessed value. This assessed value, quite honestly, is just an estimate of what it's going to be in FY20, based upon a kind of a historical perspective of what our new growth has been. I am adding, actually, in this particular case above, I am adding no market growth whatsoever. And by market growth, I mean increased prices of real estate in town. This new growth is basically additional houses, additional construction, per se, some modifications where there are substantial value increases in residential homes, but again, it's mostly new construction. In the absence of that market growth over a period of years, whereas in FY20 we're projecting a tax rate of $22.68, again, not including the debt exclusions, and we move that forward by our annual 2.5% increases annually, we project that in FY 2024, we will have hit that 2.5% valuation limitation. And at that point in time, we would not be able to raise that 1.2 million, or by FY 25, it would be almost 1.4 million. We would not be able to raise funds beyond that. There are some additional calculations below there with certain other assumptions. If there was a 1% market growth, and then actually even below that further, there's additional estimates that if we had a minor decrease in valuation of 0.5%, regardless, at some point in time, if valuations do not increase, we will hit that valuation limitation. And that's what we are trying to prepare for. Just to give you an example of and if that happens, and again, as I said, we would not be able to raise roughly $1.2 million worth of taxes. What I've tried to portray here are just some of the non-discretionary types of expenses that we have in our FY 2020 budget. Our health insurance in FY 2020 is a $5 million ticket. Our retirement assessment is a $3.3 million ticket, and so on. You can see the numbers. The projected increase in those particular areas are in this middle column, where health insurance we're projecting to increase going forward at a rate of 7.5%. Our retirement for the near future is expected to go up nearly 8%. Liability insurance is at 5%. And you can see that right away would equate to almost what we would have the ability to raise. We would be looking to increase or to absorb that $1.2 million into our budget without having the ability to raise taxes, which would mean we would have to cut from our services about $1.2 million in our normal operating services on an annual basis in order that we maintain compliance with Proposition 2.5. So what type of services would we be looking at, potentially cuts? Again, these are just my kind of areas. Obviously, the select board and town meeting would be the ones who would be making the decisions, but some of the things that we would be talking about, if we had to make up that $1.2 million worth of cuts, that we would be looking at a reduced capital program, where currently our capital program is utilizing about $2 million annually for street maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, building, major projects, so on and so forth. We'd be looking at cuts to our school department, reductions in staff, reductions in programs. In our non-school areas, we'd be looking at reductions in public safety personnel, which would then cause an increase in response times, a decrease in public safety programs. If we had cuts to the DPW, we'd be looking at, longer waits for snow removal, if some snow removal was done at all, given some small accumulations, decline in our facilities and ground maintenance. We'd have a deterioration in infrastructure because of the loss of the capital program, reduction probably in tree maintenance and supplemental plantings. For general government, we would probably have, again, I'm sure every function of town government would be hit. The general government function would be had. We'd have less personnel, which would mean a potential of increase in administrative errors and probably a delay in responding to resident inquiries. Reduction in recreational programs. We can go down the list. If the health department, we'd be looking at, loss of health services, library staff and services would be lost. FY20, we just heard from Jean Maziarz today that people are complimenting her today. Today was the first day that they opened up at 9 a.m. instead of 10 a.m. and there were people already there at 9 a.m. So, those types of services will be lost. Reduction in the Council on Aging type of services. And then we could potentially be looking at alternatives which would mitigate some of those losses, and those would be increases in fees. And by fees, I would be referring to trash fees, stormwater fees, licenses and permits, and other types of things, in order to, again, mitigate some of that loss that we would have to be absorbed in those loss of services above. So I don't know if anybody has questions. It was very quick, hopefully succinct. People get the idea of what we're confronted with. If there is no market growth in the town of Long Meadow, we are mainly fully built out. We are not going to see many huge projects that is going to give us large influxes of real property tax money. So it's something that we do have to monitor with other communities who are somewhat also confronted with we're also confronted with the same type of scenario, mainly in Western Massachusetts.
Mark?
Yeah, I took Paul's presentation and I added a few things to it, Paul, that I thought would be helpful. And one was, I looked at this list that you have here, not necessarily the top, which is what we cut, but the bottom and the things of, what are we trying to do? And Marie, you just handed out something. What are we trying to do to offset the situation, whether it's, new added revenue streams, increased tax base, or decrease operating budget. And next to each one of those, I put the potential dollar figure for those. And I also then translated that into, if you will, a percentage of a year, if we need $1.4 million a year added revenue to do any of these things. And so when you look at, a stormwater utility, so stormwater utility, might bring in, or might let us move $300,000 or $350,000 a year more from tax-based to fee-based. But $350,000 is only 15% of what we need to raise every year, and so it's not like that buys us 5 years worth of more time before we exceed this gap. And in fact, if you look at all of these things combined, there may be a year and a half, 2 years kinds of thing. And so the outfall from this is we ought to be doing all these things, but collectively we still need to go after some very long-term response. And in doing this, the history is Proposition 2.5 was passed in 1980, went into effect in 1982, I believe. And so, we've now got 38 years now of Proposition 2.5, and we've got to try to overcome compound interest at 32 years. And the only way to do that is, in my opinion, through legislative relief. And I just wanted to get that out because we're working on all these things, they're all really important, but even if we do them all collectively, it doesn't solve the problem, which has far more fundamental, reasons for us being where we are.
Richard?
Yeah, I noticed there's no consolidation or regionalization or any of those efforts.
They would be added to the list. You're right, Richard.
Yeah, because we're still sitting here, communities stacked so tightly together with duplicate governments, and, when you put 4 or 5 towns together, it really is a larger city in America. It's not 4 or 5 towns. It's just a city.
But you don't get to do 4 for the price of
Yeah, you do.
one.
Well, you're not going to do it for 1, Mark, but you're certainly going to do it for a lot less than we do. I mean, you just stop and think, go through it. Just like the statement I just said, and you know this is a fact, 5 of these communities would be a normal city in America. I mean, we only have 16,000. East Long Meadow's only has 16,000. There's housing developments got more people than that in America.
Right, but just like we were talking about for the Board of Health, you combine the two, there's no cost reduction based on doing that.
Well, you got across the board cost reduction when you just start going through departments, the DPWs and everything else. You don't need a director for every 9-mile town in the Commonwealth to handle DPW functions.
Well,
It's
I
just
think-
not required.
Right, I think it's part of the things we definitely have to look at. I know that when we talked as a task force, we were talking about things to look at, and we talked about additional revenue streams, increased tax base, decreasing operating budget. We mentioned regionalization.
But it's
and
not
that
on
was
there.
No, he doesn't have that
Okay,
on the
that's
cuts.
It's on there now.
Because this is, okay.
The other thing too, I enjoy the opportunity to sit in these sessions because invariably the first thing they go for is maintenance dollars. That is the one thing.
Well, the
that is-
trees were
That is
good
one
too.
thing that's universal across the thing. And the one thing that is universal is those facilities don't care if we ran out of money or not. They're still deteriorating
Yeah.
at the same rate. And that will escalate and the curve doesn't go linear. It's disproportionate what happens when you start applying the dollars. I understand that's a lot of talk, and we do like to cut maintenance dollars and think that we're getting ahead, and we're really just burying ourselves.
When it's really payroll. Our
Payroll
payroll
is
and the
it.
benefits, as we saw, is that what cannot be moved is that, and we need to look at a new way of delivering services. And I think that's the effort, and it's not an easy thing to do when we talk about the regionalization of the Board of Health, because we see the costs increasing. We saw the costs increasing with our dispatch, and it's not a pretty picture. It's not easy to go that way. But regionalization is, I think, probably one of our keys to survival.
Well, I've said many, many, many times, I think eventually, as the years go by and maybe dead and gone, we're going to wish that we'd never split from East Long Meadow because they ended up with the land and the businesses. And we got all the beautiful school systems and the residential. And they got the money-making machine. And we don't have that money-making machine. They don't have the same problem that we have. Correct, Paul?
So they're in the
They're almost there.
mid-20s, or low 20s rather.
Yeah, no, I know that they've been watching it. They're probably a step or two behind us.
But they've got a lot more
But yeah,
land.
no, you're absolutely right. They have a lot more room for new growth.
They need a planning division that's really working over there to
Right.
make that town mushroom and
Right.
grow.
And,
It's there.
And to some degree, they have a lot more commercial, which is
Right.
good also to a certain degree.
And they can split the tax rate over there.
They could-
pretty
they could
easily.
split the
There's a lot of
tax rate.
evidence on it.
But Long Meadow likes to be Long Meadow. Tom?
Oh, that comment we need.
So you look at this 1.2 million reduction, and as you said before, there are certain things, insurance and retirement and so forth, we can't touch. So if we looked at it, if we look at the places we can cut, right, it's not just like a 2.5% cut. I mean,
No,
if
you
we had
would
to cut the budget, it would be like what would you say?
Well,
If
no,
we cut across the budget,
I mean, you'd have to go in almost every one of these departments and probably cut, 5 to 10%.
5 to 10%, yeah. And I think
in
that's
order
what we
make
need to
this
keep in mind.
right. So it's not going to be one police officer, it could be 2, it's not going to be one teacher, I mean, it could be 10 teachers.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
it's
not
going
like
to be
saying, well,
large cuts.
And
Yeah,
that's
we're not
for
gonna
1
just say,
year.
well, no 2% raises.
1 year,
It's,
possibly the next year, because again, we
Again.
can't raise it.
Yeah.
And we still have those non-discretionary things that we have to take care of, so it could just keep on deteriorating.
Oh, by the way, crime rate goes up, class size go up, scores go down.
Property
and
taxes go down.
Property values go down.
Property values.
That number then goes up,
Right.
and now
Snowball.
it's a death spiral. And I think,
Now, that's the quote that's going to come out tomorrow.
yeah.
And
So,
you're going to Concord.
right. So, they do not have a tax rate issue.
Oh, there we go.
They have a tax bill issue. They don't have a tax rate issue. So one of the things, though, that I think in connecting two dots, I think one of the strengths of the board is your ability to compartmentalize, not let issues spill one into the other. But I want to But the idea that there was, I know Dr. Rappaport did say that they are supportive of the concept, but I think if you read the document, there was concerns about it, and it really mostly, I think, is uncertainty and loss of control, which you're going to encounter on most regionalization efforts. And if we can't get over an initial hump for something as really small in many ways as our health department, how are we going to do it when it comes to much larger scale operations? And I think the select board really has to begin to temper expectations and really show leadership to say, listen, we're going to do this because we need to do this. Whether it's additional fees or reductions in services or what have you, it's going to have to be telling people no and making the tough decisions now that may seem to the general public not needed today, but will be needed in the future. And I'll give you, Mark and I argued about a trash fee. I argued that the time to do a trash fee is now. Put it on the books at $1 a month, while you're going to charge people $12 a year, and give them a $55, trash barrel, as a gift. And I know that there wasn't broad support for that, but those are the types of decisions that are going to confront this group in the very near future.
Marie, but I think it's worth commenting, and this isn't a rebuttal, Stephen, because your comments are correct. But part of the analysis I did, and I'd love to share it with people, is, and I'll send it to the select board members, is I looked at the growth of revenue through taxes.
No, it's in the packet.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't get the whole thing. They didn't get
there's
all
more?
18. Oh yeah.
I only saw the 13.
No, but I did it for Hampden County, Hampshire County, Franklin County. I did it for Middlesex County, and then I did it for other groups. And what it shows consistently is that the rate of increase of taxes, not tax rate, but the amount of money raised through residential taxes in Longmeadow has gone up amongst the lowest in the Commonwealth. And that's since 2003 through 2019, that's 16 years, our taxes have gone up amongst the lowest of any community in the Commonwealth.
Because of our valuation?
No, just because we're doing a good job holding the line on spending.
We've always been overtaxed.
No, it's not. It's because we're
Well,
holding the line on spending.
That's also a growth factor, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's...
Longmeadow's been largely built out
since mid-'70s.
since
Well, but
the
other
80s,
other
really, yeah.
communities are taking advantage of the fact that they have this new growth, and they're raising their rate of money raised by taxes great. Some at a rate of like 1.5, 1.6% a year, or 2.5 or 2.6% a year, and we're at 2%. I mean, we've got some communities that are raising money, so it's not a spending issue. It's not that we're overspending. It's that we're doing a better job holding the line on spending of any community that I've looked at, with the exception of Florida, in Massachusetts, which the town of Florida, which somehow has done an amazing job on holding the line on spending.
So I think to reinforce that point, because you're right, it isn't profligate spending that got us here. We have a AA2 bond rating, which we're lucky to have that, considering what you look at our ability to pay within the term of a 30-year bond, right?
You're saying all the wrong things.
I know. But I think that point is well taken. And but that's where, like I said, the community just needs to understand what's at stake, and that's where I think I'm going to say it again, tempering expectations for services in the near future,
Yeah.
and pushing back on people who want what they want, and they want it right now, and saying, we just need to, no, we can't do that for you, or we need to cut it back.
Well, we're sort of beyond the point of just discussing. I mean, and that's why we're bringing it to the board today, in that we're talking near future now. Everything that he's given is, if we all of a sudden see a drop in our values, all it could take was maybe interest rates start flying up, the tax, new tax reform, that number could all of a sudden be
Yep.
in half on how much, what our wait time is before we hit this. So as a board, we can't wait anymore. There's a whole list of things we were looking to do, and I sort of gave you a list. This is what we were working off of our last meeting. But I think the issue is what's going to take us the longest lead time to get done, and that's the legislation. So even though we're still working on all the different things like increasing revenue streams, increasing the tax base, looking at the operating budget, regionalization, I'm sorry, you're right, Richard, was on our original list, we have to start looking at some of this legislation. It could take us 2 to 4 years to get this passed, because it's not going to be easy. There's two things I wanted the board to consider today. One is I put a letter into the packet for let's see, where is it? For S 1694, it's legislation by Senator Eric Lesser, and it's the legislation he's discussed with us for several years, which is, it's called an act relative to regional transportation ballot initiatives. In here, it allows the town to give a gas tax, and that would be something that would have to go in front of town meeting, but it's another tool that's going to be given to future boards in the toolbox. And so we might have a half a penny at the gas station, and that would help keep up our infrastructure that Richard's talking about. Now, it's now in a committee, and if we do support the act relative to regional transportation ballot initiatives, it's recommended that we write letters to the two committees, one in the State House and, one the Senate and other the legislature. I didn't know how people felt about the letter I put together, and if there's a consensus for me to go ahead and go and send a letter supporting the passage of the legislation.
Is this local option tax staying within the communities, or is it going into a?
Oh, no, it goes to us. And that's why it's going to be a tough battle, because Beacon Hill loves to keep the taxes there. So that means the stations locally, it's almost like our meals tax,
Right.
where the meals tax stays with us.
Right. Yeah, I didn't quite get to finish my statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was the question.
You need a little more caffeine?
Yeah, that's what this all is.
I think it is.
So what was your comment?
I have no more comments.
Oh, that was it? Oh, okay. Any consensus or motion on the floor to allow me to go ahead and send out the letters?
I just have, do we have any idea what the value of this is?
The value of it will be, depends on how it comes out of legislation.
No, but my question is, does this raise $10,000 for the town or $150,000?
I have no idea how much Pride Station is selling down in the south end.
No, but is this 3 cents a gallon or is this 50 cents a gallon?
Oh, no, we're talking, it would be a half penny.
Oh, no, more like more than that, Marie.
No, I would say no more than a penny, and my guess is you'd be pulling another 100,000 in.
Well, we could take it 5 cents a week.
You can drive to the south end of town, see what the station that has the Dunkin' Donuts in Connecticut is charging, which is many pennies
Yeah.
per
Oh, yeah,
gallon over the
Connecticut's-
Pride Station, and split the difference, and you still wouldn't lose much revenue because people would still go there to get gas.
Right, but would you drive to, East Longmeadow if they didn't have it or something? I don't know.
No.
I mean,
That's not
It's
what,
not going to be a
Right.
differentiator.
Not after a year's usage. Forget about it.
I just don't know what the potential value is. That's all.
it's something.
Yeah, even if it's something, I think we should pursue it.
Okay.
And at some point, would the town need to vote on this? Would that come to
Yes.
town meeting?
If this gets passed, then it's, again, the tool in the toolbox, like we did the Airbnb tax, we would bring it in front of town meeting, and they would have to agree to put that in, like we did the meals tax.
Yeah,
That went through town meeting.
I would support sending out these letters to all
Okay.
40 senators, because it would be something, like you say, eventually the town would decide on if they wanted to do it or not. And we might as well have it ready in time versus being behind and having to make big budget cuts in order to catch up. So, yeah, thank you for drafting it.
All right, and then the second one is the task force asked our attorney to give us proposed language on how to deal with the 2.5% ceiling limit alteration and legislation. And of the two variations, the task force is recommending the second sample, which is just a clear removal of the cap. So we would always have the 2.5%. It's that $25 cap that might have made sense in the 80s, which now with inflation and everything else is just near impossible. And so what I'm asking for is if the select board agrees with this legislation, then we can start going around to the towns in Western Mass especially, that's where they're having the problem, who also have this issue, and try to get several towns together to submit legislation. Again, this would be something that we get as a tool in the toolbox. Once, let's say it passes, it still has to go in front of town meeting for them to adopt it. Is that correct, Paul?
Well, it would be the local option, so it's still gonna have to go to, not town meeting, but to probably a
Oh, a whole ballot issue.
Ballot question.
So it'd have to go to the ballot. So it's nothing that we are being able to make a decision, we're just saying we want to offer that option to the town. How do people feel about going with the second example as recommended by the task force?
So Marie, if I could, the purpose of my earlier speech about the lowest tax rate, increase in tax in the Commonwealth was because we've been responsible under the 2.5 cap and believe we would continue to be, and all this would do is tell the people in town, we're not going to have to make any draconian cuts to services. Yes, your taxes will continue to go up, but they'll continue to go up no quicker than they have in the past, because, and by the way, we've been pretty responsible. I think that's it really gives us a way to counteract the potential dire consequences that Paul outlined. And the alternative is you do it this way or you're going to pay it through fees, but one way or the other, people in town want to continue the services. So you either let us do it this way or you're going to pay somewhere else where you have less control because it'll be through fees and not through the tax base.
Richard?
Counterpoint.
Yeah.
It also says that maybe we're not willing to make hard choices on this board, and the easiest way out is to increase the tax base and get approval. If we don't recognize that we need to make some cuts someplace, I don't know why we have a board. I mean, anybody can increase taxes. I think the real task before us is being systematic in where we think we ever done it services and looking to trim stuff, not massive cuts, but I don't think we've had a real overview of everything that we could control. I agree, the legislation may take 3 to 5 years. It may be good to get it going now. So I'm not opposed to that. I'm just opposed to that being a primary tool in the toolbox. And that we aren't responsible to our needs as a board, as elected officials, before that.
Mark?
I think it's a primary tool in the toolbox for the long term. Inevitably, we're going to hit $25 in our mill rate. The short term, I totally agree with you. We need to be more discreet and more critical about what we cut from the budget. But I think this is a great idea. At the very least, the town should be able to vote on whether or not they want to go above $25, the 2.5%.
Tom?
Well, a couple of points. One is that I think the town has done a great job to supplement that the members of the town, the community has done a great job. If you look at something like, the LEAF committee, look at the LEAF and all the money they've raised to help schools be the best in Western Mass. You look at all the booster clubs that help with our sports teams to help us make it to the finals of the states and all these different competitions, and now robotics and you name it. I think the residents of this town have done, it's been a noble effort, and if it hadn't been for their donations, just think of the kind of shape we would be in. We'd be in a lot worse shape. When we look at, the way we've tried to keep the tax rate, just going up, at 2.5, but trying to even cut it down a little bit over all these years, we've done a great job, and yet $25 per thousand does seem like an artificial thing, and we should address that cap. But it isn't like other communities have been rolling in dough. You can't say that the prices of houses in Agawam have spiked way above us or Wilbraham. I mean, it's just we're a depressed area. Western Mass just doesn't get the kind of businesses that we should. I mean, we're centrally we have a perfect location. Probably till the day I die, I will never understand why this area is not more successful, because we're so close. 90 miles from Boston, 90 miles from Albany. We have New York City close, Vermont, New Hampshire. Everybody goes through here, but it just hasn't turned around. I don't understand it. But our community isn't any different than any other community, and we haven't seen our property values go up, and they are not if other towns don't go up either. And so I think we should move in this direction to get legislation to support our position.
Marie, if I can just give some insight to Tom's question, which is why is Long Meadow where it is? And one of the issues is that raising revenue above 2.5% a year has two components. Raising your taxes on existing properties by 2.5% a year,
Right.
plus new growth.
Right.
That's where we lag communities. There was a period of time that my charting showed between 2002 and 2006 where almost every community came along and went like this, and Long Meadow just went like that. Every community. Agawam, West Springfield, but certainly in eastern part of Massachusetts. And a lot of that was new growth, not just the run-up in values. And so our taxable property, the amount of money we can raise taxes on, has gone up almost nil over the years. And all these other communities have where you're not a Concord or Weston or Wellesley, where their values went up, they have this new growth. Towns you couldn't understand, like Tolland in Massachusetts. Tolland had a huge amount of new growth that came in during that period of time. And so they literally went up 50% in the amount of taxes they're raising, but they didn't raise their existing tax rate that much. And so that's the issue for the town of Long Meadow, is that there's no new growth. And that's what's caught us in this bind, if you will. At least that's what the analysis seems to show.
So is there a motion to accept the legislation recommendations
So
of
moved.
the... Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just one, because this is my last chance to talk about this.
Yes.
To Richard's point, giving the local option is the essence of this. It's a local option, a local control bill, and so what it does is give Long Meadow the ability to continue to invest in itself to the level that it sees fit. And so if you do an option where the town gets to set the ceiling for a certain term, like we want to be at $27 per thousand, and do an override vote for there, you can still balance fiscal restraint and an increased taxing potential to kind of hold that line that Mark has been talking about. So I think that this really is probably, I would say, the only way out, but really the primary way to address this issue.
It's an important tool. All those in favor? Oh, you had another, I'm sorry.
I can have I'll answer this question after the vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
I'm going to vote present.
Okay, and one present.
The
401.
You know, when I go up to 36,000 foot and I look down at our community and I see a 5-acre plot down here that's been for sale for 5 years, and there's been zero talk at this board on anything. 5 acres, just down the street from us.
Which one, the synagogue site?
Yeah,
Oh,
5
that's-
acres. For sale.
It's not for sale.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
it went
There's a
back
sale
up.
sign out
No, it
every
went
day.
back up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
but
was.
it's
But
still
there's
being
never
developed.
been a discussion to buy that land and to do anything with it. And yet, we've got a proposal that was at town meeting to award $2.7 million to buy a little piece of property messing around with the gas or whatever we may not be able to control. That's what irritates me, is I don't hear the discussions being on this board that should be on the board. But I hear curative type discussions like Prop 2.5, we need to get rid of it, it's phony. Well, why don't we develop our own land first? Why
Well, the
don't we?
water tower property is on the
It's
future
been on
agenda.
the board for 6
Yes.
years.
Because you can't build your way out of this, Richard.
But why don't you develop what you have?
We
Why
have-
aren't we developing our own
We are
property?
waiting for a plan. Pioneer Valley Planning Commission should be getting back to us within, do you think by the end of the summer? There was a delay.
Yeah.
Buy it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to have,
It's 5
that will
acres.
be on a future agenda
Right.
very soon.
What are they doing?
Exactly my point.
Oh, water tower
So we
property.
Put a senior housing.
Just-
They do a feasibility study?
Yeah, if he's like a plan, basically an economic
Let somebody
assessment.
else put it.
So
We
basically,
don't think
it's
out
not
loud.
It's not the
it's a
town.
conceptual, not like a
Oh.
very vague site plan, but like a certain number of units, like to a certain density, and then the plan will show what you get in terms of value and tax revenue for single-family homes, 1-story, 2-story, 3-story. So it's, because the point is, you have to show people what you're going to get if they're going to make a change to the character of the community, which is the first, second, and third thing you're going to hear when you propose a development of a density to make a difference. If you buy a 5-acre parcel, it is being developed for taxable use, by the way. That's one of the reasons why I haven't talked
Well,
about it.
finally, it's been
Right.
developed, yeah, but it's been available
But if you
for
all of a
5
sudden say,
years.
we're going to take that 5-acre parcel and carve it out into 6 house lots, you have made it worse, not better. And so now as projects go forward, like on parcels like that, the town really should be, and the planning board's heard me say this many times, and so have you, as high a density as you can possibly get, which means variances and zoning changes, and that's where the community has not really shown a propensity for making that easy for people.
Because this board has to provide leadership.
Yeah.
And we haven't done it.
And Richard, I disagree. I
Well,
think
you
it's
can
the-
disagree all you
No, I
want.
know, but I think the reason that the town hasn't shown a propensity for it, Stephen, is you put in 6 houses, and let's be generous, they're gonna generate $12,000 a house, I don't know, that's $72,000 in taxes. You put in high-density property, let's say $150,000 maybe, so it's $70,000 extra. When you have a $1.4 million a year problem, are you willing to change the character of the town for $70,000 revenue, additional revenue
High-density
stream?
development doesn't change the character of the
Okay,
town.
wait.
That's the
this
point.
It's right
That's
now-
where the leadership
okay,
comes in, Mark,
wait.
is
Now,
telling the people that.
Excuse me,
yeah.
we're just talking about something that's not even on the agenda.
Yeah, well, no, it was on
It's,
the agenda.
no, we are going to bring it on, the water tower property
No,
and
no,
future
no, no, wait a
development
minute,
will be
Maureen.
brought
We're
on.
talking about the general thing of the tax committee.
Yeah.
And that's a discussion there. It's not specifically talking about developing any property. And, if we're going to have discussion, at least let's open the table. That's the problem we have. Nobody wants to discuss stuff. I can tell you for a fact, Mark Borowski came on this board 9 years ago, and the number one issue in his mind was develop the water tower property. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Number one issue. And it's been talked about every year since, and there's zero action.
Well, I disagree with that. I just finished telling you there's action being brought. A plan has been developed. It was held off because of a illness in the family. It's going to be brought before this board, and you're going to have it on the agenda, and you can discuss it. And the other thing that will be brought in front of this board is other property.
Well,
But
then
just
my
talk about
statement is
a-
correct. It has not been before the board in 9
No, it
years.
has not come back in front of the
Okay.
board.
Then any future business,
Yes.
that's great.
But there has been movement on it and will be brought before this
Right.
board.
Boy,
Yes.
movement.
We were going to
Yes.
maybe build a DPW there for a little while. We saw how
Yeah.
well, let's just say the neighborhood didn't really respond well to that.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to connect the high-density development that you really need to make a difference, and neighborhood feedback you're possibly going to hear.
Yeah,
Well,
it-
how many years does it take, you're a planner, how many years does it take to do a decent job on planning?
A year or two.
At least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. 'Cause we have a tentative thing coming up here with possible consolidation of a school. And the release of how many acres? 22, is it? 17 to 22 acres?
I don't know how big.
In my-
We don't know where it's going to go yet. That's why you
Well,
don't.
that's true, but in my feeling, though, that should still be on somebody's radar screen to where they're starting to talk and plan on what's the possibility, because they know there's 1 or 2 locations. I mean, just to get it in the cycle.
Yeah.
And I don't see us doing that. It kind of bothers me that we're not looking too far into the future.
Well, I think we have 2 major building projects that are underway.
Right.
I think we did get discussion going on Turner Park. and there was a movement in trying to get any progress going towards deciding where we were going with Turner Park in the next 20 years. That got slammed. I think we've tried to bring the water tower property numerous times in front of this board, and there's been no progress. The tax ceiling task force has made a step forward. It's going to come in with an actual action step in
Right.
front of us within the next month or two.
And the reason the water tower, or not the water tower, the Turner Park
Yeah.
got slammed is that this board really didn't support it. There was no support on the board displayed at public meeting. If there
No,
had been,
definitely not.
If there had been, that would have been done. We were only trying to get a planning document going.
That's right.
It was only a vision of what could be the future, and it was soundly rejected because of who knows what. So, you know, it's very disappointing to see these efforts try to generate and try to come out of the incubator and somebody to cut off the oxygen. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we got to keep going
Yeah.
at it. All right. Anything else in the way of board committees, subcommittee reports? No? Okay.
Marie, I'll just comment that Mark and Paul Pasturzik and I met this afternoon to start talking about the streetlight purchase program, so we've got a plan moving forward.
Okay.
That,
I just had one question. This board voted last meeting on a couple general fund transfers within budgetary constraints. The Finance Committee and the Select Board approved the fire overtime, not a problem. This committee also approved one for the electrical switch.
Yeah.
The school department has opted to pick up the tab on that electrical switch.
Oh,
It's still on the agenda, or potentially on the agenda, is money for the raised crosswalk. Will that be on the agenda for the 15th? Because that
was-
would be the last day for
right.
transfers.
It was supposed to be, we're waiting for the second
Right, we're
bid, which was
waiting on
not
the quotes.
available.
Okay.
When that quote's ready, it's going to be on the agenda.
Then it sounds like I need to convene the Finance Committee to have another shot at that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then we might find out who they're choosing.
Right, I would also put that on the agenda also. And then I think Mark had made a comment at the last meeting to have them come before this board to explain their votes. So minimally, I guess if there's a negative vote on the crosswalk, you may want to have them in front of you for the discussion.
Oh, okay, very good idea. All right, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn to go into executive session?
You want to explain why?
I'll move we go into executive session for purposes of negotiation.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Yes,
Not to return to open meeting?
not to return to open meeting.
Yes.
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 Thank you very much, and we'll see you on July 15th.
These are lights.